Project conceptualization. How do we actually start putting together a project? One of the key documents, the first document that you need to complete for your project is the so-called Logframe. A logical framework is one part of the project planning process. Before you start, I advise you get some stationery together. Ideally a big sheet of paper with a whole range of some post-it notes. The approach to this is to create what we call a problem tree. Write the main problem you wish to solve with this project in the middle of the page and work out what the project actually is. Who are the key people involved? How might they be affected by the problem? What's the impact of the problem on these people? You start writing all of these notes around this problem on the paper. You can do this, what we call a problem analysis. In the middle of your page, you write down your problem, which you wish to tackle, and then branch off possible causes of the problem until you're satisfied that you found an overall cause and effect narrative. Because this is affecting the community, this is the impact. Because of this, this is the impact. Hopefully at this point, your notes will look like a bit like a problem tree. Then change the wording into positive terms. You have now started with a problem which is generally negatively formulated. For example, if your problem was lack of sufficient water, would then become an aim to improve water supply. What is your project about? It's solving the problem. So we need to formulate it in a constructive, positive way. Once you've done that, you'll have an objective tree and you'll be able to transfer these notes into the log frame. Then it becomes quite easy to fill the log frame and complete it in a coherent, logical fashion. Now you should have gathered answers to the following questions and ready to write your log frame. What is the project going to achieve? What's the objective? Which activities will be carried out? What resources, people and equipment will you need? What potential problems might you come across in the implementation of this project? How will the progress and ultimate success of the project be measured? All of this information should now be on your sheet in different post-it notes. You might now go back and adjust that, maybe refine it after you've again reviewed these questions. Have you answered all these questions on your sheet with the post-it notes? A logical framework. Why is this such an important document in the application process? It fulfills several functions. It develops a structured set of project ideas. It clarifies the objectives and the outputs, the results that needs to be achieved. It provides a clear brief and a logical description of the proposed project. It helps to identify possible risks of the project, and it provides a useful basis for project evaluation and appraisal. A standard log frame is divided into 4 rows and 4 or 5 columns, which are your long to short-term objectives ranging from the top to the bottom. For this project, we use a very simplified log frame. But you need to start thinking to complete the simplified log frame. You still need to think on the overall start with the project purpose, the overall aim and outcome. What will be achieved with your project? Who will benefit and by when? Note, this is only a 5-month project. So you cannot be over-ambitious. Pick a small, reasonable, successful project in this process. The result or the outputs, the specific results that this project will produce. It will produce training. It will produce skills enhancement. It will develop language capabilities. It will foster better cultural interaction. One of those are the things that the project will produce. Activities, what tasks needs to be done in order for the output to be achieved. The basis of your log frame, your project purpose, the anticipated effect that the project will achieve by delivering the planned outputs. The results and outputs are tangible results that the project management team would be able to guarantee to deliver. Outputs are generally delivered within the specific time frame, the 5-month duration of your project. Activities and inputs. Inputs are the resources that the project consume in the course of undertaking the activities. Typically, they will be human resources, money, materials, equipment, and time. The activities must be undertaken by the project to produce the outputs. The activities will take time to perform, and this needs to be reflected in your project work plan. If we look at the full logical framework, it's a 4-column, 5-row structure. If there are certain preconditions that's met, and we implement the activities, we start reading it from the bottom upwards, a log frame. If there are certain preconditions, activities, which is implemented by utilizing specific means at the specific costs, that will produce certain results, which we can verify and measure, when all of these results are achieved, the project purpose, the objective that we set out at the start of the project, can be achieved and can bring about that change and benefit to a community. For this project, we'll only use results and activities, the bottom part of a log frame. As an example, if our goal is to create a community of happy children and adults in a village, we then need to, developing a log frame, follow the if and then logic. An example, if we establish a community committee, which is an activity, and the people are enthusiastic, which is an assumption, then we'll have the capacity to build and manage a playground, which is a result and output of the project. If we have a playground, which was the result or the output, and it's easy to maintain, which is another assumption, then the children will have fun. The project and objective of the project objective and purpose of the whole project that we're undertaking. If the children are having fun, which is the objective we wish to achieve, and the families continue to grow in the village, which is an assumption, then we'll reach the goal of a happy community. I hope this gives you an indication of the questions and the flow of logic that you need to construct for your project. A simplified African-German Youth Initiative log frame. It requires the result, the intervention that you'll do, indicators, how will you measure if this result has been achieved, the targets that you set, you want to train 20 people, we want to reach 50 people in the community. It needs to specify the sources and verification. Where will we find this information? What documents and evidence can we produce to demonstrate that the result has been achieved? Assumptions, the factors that may influence the project that are outside our control. And then we look at each of the activities. And for each activity, we also have indicators. We also have targets for each activity. The workshop will be completed within the 2 months. 20 people will attend the workshop. We'll achieve a satisfaction rate of 70% of the participants of the workshop with the learning or experience they had in the workshop. Sources of verification. Where will we find the evidence to measure these indicators? And then assumptions. There might be load shedding. There might be some external factors that will not allow us to have the workshop and cause us to delay. So this is a simplified log frame, very straightforward and not as complicated as a full overall log frame. When outlining your activities, you need to ask yourself, what can we actually do? 5 months with a limited budget. On the South African side, 10,000 euro is in the order of 160,000 rand. 15,000 euro budget is in the order of 220,000 rand. So it's not millions that you have available to achieve this project. It's a very, very limited amount of money. What have we already got that we can use to reach the overall goal? Build on things that has already been done. Specifically look at growing networks of alumni. Some of these structures exist. Some of these structures have been formed but need support to grow and solidify them. Remember to think what you're working on and going to do with each of the target groups. Who's the beneficiaries? Who will work with? Who will we deal with? And who are the community leaders, if we look at the community-based project, that we will deal with? You look at a school project, who's the principal? Those are the stakeholders you need to mobilize. Let's work through an example. The problem we have, house mothers in a one-stop shelter of XYZ province do not have capacity to deal with clients. That's the problem statement we have. We said this now needs to be reformulated into a positive statement. So our project objective, what we want to achieve with this project, is to better enable house mothers of one-stop shelters in XYZ province to deal with the clients. So that's our objective. How will we achieve that objective? We need to do 2 things. We need to achieve certain results. For this specific project, result 1, we'll train 60 house mothers, volunteers, of the shelter to 5-day workshops through an expert on how to interact with clients. So our first result is we're going to put them through a 5-day training, And then after a period of time, we're going to put them through another 5-day training. So in the end, they will receive 10 days of training. To further enable these house mothers to deal with their clients, we'll also do a second step. 60 house mother volunteers of One Stop Shelter in XYZ province have been supervised and coached twice a week for 45 minutes on how to interact with clients. So we're going to have 2 results that we need to achieve. 2 5-day trainings, and then we're going to have an expert that's going to interact and coach with them 45 minutes a week to make sure that the skills they've learned on the training are embedded, they're able to apply that when they deal with their clients. So now we have a project objective, what we want to achieve, and we have 2 results. For the practicality of this exercise, we'll just look at result 1. Now we need to look and see, okay, for result 1, what are the things we need to do, the activities that will deliver this result? First activity, expert training consultant recruited. We need an expert that has got the skills and experience to train these house mother volunteers. Then we need a training manual. The consultant will develop a training curriculum for these 2 5-day workshops. Then we'll conduct the first 5-day workshop, and we'll conduct a second 5-day workshop. We will also, to ensure that the workshops and the training has been successful, we will evaluate the training. So there's 5 activities that needs to be implemented to achieve result 1, to enable and better the capability of these volunteer house mothers to deal with their clients. So there we have now conceptualized and designed a project, clearly specified what we want to do. We've got numbers, we've got specific things, and we now need to transfer this into a log frame. Log frame, we have the result, number 1, top left-hand corner. We want to do these 2 5-day trainings. What are the indicators that we have there? Is the expert is contracted, we'll have the contract, we'll have certain evaluation documents. The means of verification, we can have a copy of the advert, we can have the expert contract, there's certain documentation that is it. What is an assumption? An external factor that which we have no control over that could possibly influence this expert being contracted and providing the training. We might not get sufficient applications because this is an XYZ province. People might not be interested to work there. So that's an assumption that could negatively impact our project, which we do not have control over from the start. Then we look at activity 1.1, which is recruit the consultant. There are certain indicators we can have the advertisement, we can have record of the interviews, and we have the training and contract of the expert. The means of verification, on file we have a copy of the advert we published, we have the minutes and records of the evaluation and review selection committee meetings, and we have a copy of the contract of the consultant. Assumptions, sufficient applications are not received. Those are factors that are outside our control. Number 2, the curriculum is developed. Once again, there's the training curriculum. That's the indicator, is the training curriculum completed. A copy of the training curriculum is the means of verification. Assumptions, the curriculum might be too high, or the quality might be too low, or the curriculum might not be effective and efficient for the purpose we have it. Those are things that we need to take consideration of. Then we have the first 5-day training. How do we know? What will the indicator? 60 of the mothers attended. We'll have attendance registers. Conference venue is booked. We have a record of that. The means of verification, the invoice for the conference, the attendance registers. Result activity 1.4, the second 5-day training is presented. We have the same indicators, we have the same means of verification. Assumptions, there might not be a venue available at that stage. The weather or whatever could prevent us. If we move in winter, snow could prevent the mothers from reaching this, or rain in the summer. Those are all the external factors we need to consider, and we record them in our log frame. Number 1.5, the last activity, training evaluated. We've got evaluation forms. The mothers complete them, and we have the results and the data which can be analyzed, and we can produce a report on the success of the training on that end. Assumption, Maybe not all the mothers complete the evaluation form, so we have an incomplete evaluation. So this is how an example, we start with a problem, we've reformulated into an objective, we determine which results are required, and we then develop activities which we can implement, measure, and demonstrate our success with evidence. There. Result 1, expert contracted, attendance registers, the house mothers are available, we've got a suitable expert. Training consultant recruited, advertising interviews, consultants have signed the contract, means of verification, copy of the adverts. Consultant develops the training curriculum, copy of the curriculum, first 5-day training, the participants have attended the training at the conference center, the participant list is our means of verification, copy of the contract with the conference center, and an assumption is the venue availability for the preferred dates. We might wish to have the training in this month, but there's no conference facilities available. Second 5-day training, house mothers can attend, replacement staff for this day at the shelters. One of the key things we need to do, we need to find replacement staff because we're now removing the house mother for 5 days to attend this training. So who's going to perform her functions and look after her clients in those 5 days? So those are critical things you need to think about in more detail when you start looking at the assumptions. Training evaluated, all delegates complete evaluation forms, we've got the data, we analyze the data, and we can produce a report on that. Indicators, just some quick advice on indicators. Indicators need to be smart, specific, relate to the specific result and the activity. They need to be measurable. We cannot afford airy-fairy indicators that is not measurable. They need to be qualitative and quantitative statements, which should reflect the extent to which the results have been attained. 20 trainings for 30 students, at least 50% being women. Be aware, the quantities you define will have a major influence on your budget. So we can have very nice indicators, but we also need to consider the cost of measuring those indicators. Achievable, they must be realistic and acceptable by the involved partners. Relevant, it must be useful and provide useful information to evaluate and determine the success of the project. Time-bound, they must include target dates. Our indicators we have the first workshop before the end of the second month, the second workshop before the end of the third month 4 of the project. These dates, remember, these dates now need to correspond with the work plan you can produce. Take into account when developing indicators to reflect gender, youth, marginalized groups, language, class, ethnicity, language, education, disabilities. 50% of people attend with disabilities, or we want 10% of the delegates must be from the disabled grouping in the community. So think about those things when you develop indicators.